one really interesting thing about Leavenworth is that businesses are all locally owned. You don't see chains in Leavenworth. And I think that's one reason that people like to come here, is because you go down the street and around the town, and it's not the cookie cutter list of stores that you see everywhere that makes every place look alike. It's not part of homogenized America. They're all individuals. And you walk into the store and you meet the person who owns that store. It's not a chain. Safeway, I think, is probably the only one. When you come into this valley, it's a different smell. You get a fragrance, and the sound subsides. And coming up into this end of the valley, there's something about the quiet where other sounds can come through. The natural sounds aren't obscured by the higher level of sounds, the energy of where there's a lot of other people and high-tech equipment around. And you hear the creaks of the trees and the frogs and the bird sounds, and some of the frogs are pretty loud in the spring, but it's a soft sound. You can go to sleep with the sounds of the frogs. I think maybe my favorite time is there's about 2 weeks in the spring, just after the snow has melted, and there's a few patches around under the trees, and the ground's still moist. It hasn't dried out yet. And there's a fragrance from the ground of the little green shoots coming up. You can go up on the hillside, and it's a special smell and a special color that pretty soon it's gone. That's the only time of year, but I make a special effort to be here at that time and just walk up on the hillside alone, just to absorb that fragrance and that feeling. And then in the summer, you get the hum of the dragonflies off the ponds, and the river changes, and things get quiet after the big burst of songs and noise and the blue herons squawking and all kinds of noises around. Then the fall, it becomes quiet again. Everybody loves the fall. That's when so many people come here to see the colors. But this place actually isn't that colorful because it's mostly evergreens. And then, of course, mushrooms are wonderful around here. People have found lots of different kinds of mushrooms. I don't trust them. I like the ones that other people pick if we're going to have dinner. But I like to look at them and smell them. And then in the winter you get the silence like this, and the landscape's completely changed. And the whole world has gone to sleep, but you know that underneath the snow there's life beginning again. Yes, yes. Oh, he came out here to help clear-cut the West. He helped clear-cut Ballard. A great many of the houses in Ballard are made from wood from his sawmill. And he helped to cut the trees on the west side of the mountains. But of course, in those days, it took a long time to cut a tree down. And now they'll cut a whole mountainside in a few minutes. And he did it a lot more slowly, but that's what he did. It was because they ran out of trees in Minnesota. I guess his father told him and his brother to go west where there were lots more trees. His brother went to Los Angeles to receive logs from the market. And he came to the Northwest to cut the trees to send to his brother in Los Angeles. And we've been trying to save them ever since. Actually, my grandmother, his wife, helped to start the Arboretum, and she was active in the garden club. So while he was busy cutting trees, she was busy planting them. And even importing them from different parts of the world, Asia, and then we've been been busy trying to save some of the native forests that were here. If he were alive today, he might be doing what we're doing. I think he might. There was no concept, no. No, he was a very shrewd businessman. He saw where the money was, and this was a resource that appeared to be unlimited. We grew up in a lumber family. My grandfather was a lumberman. He came out here because of the timber, and he arrived from Minnesota because they were running out of trees there. And he had one of the earliest sawmills in Seattle, right on the ship canal. So we remember him as being up in the woods. He had one arm, but he was the boss man. Other people cut trees. His father was a timberman way back east, and he logged with oxen. So the technology has come a long way since then. Well, grandfather, where are you today? How come you're not around helping save some of the forests that you helped to cut? So he would be very shocked and surprised at what's happening to the forest today. It's hard to transport yourself ahead. I wonder if 3 or 4 generations from now, what our grandchildren will see.
Right.
Maybe they'll be trying to offset some of the things that we're doing. Well, my father's parents were Kentuckians, and I don't think they had a whole lot of interest. They had a big farm. Well, there's some strong men too. Maybe we seem to have a lot of women. This seems to be, I think there are more women in the family than there are men. My brother's a strong man, but he grew up in a family of women. There's a lot of women in the environmental movement. Maybe because women tend to have more time. Just like a lot of women are in charitable things. So many environmental organizations are nonprofits. I never thought of that before, but grandmother, between grandmother and grandfather, I'm sure there was no philosophical conflict there, because he was doing a very useful thing, and so was she. And the community was young. They didn't have a symphony. They didn't have a children's hospital. All those things that she figured in starting, and the visiting nurse service. Those services, she had time, and she had the money, and the ability to do it. She was a good organizer. And grandfather was busy making money out of the forest. So there weren't. That's the way husbands and wives lived. So she was into all these nonprofits. Well, maybe today there's so many attorneys in the environmental movement, and more men attorneys than women, but a lot of women doing the work and taking the lead because maybe they have more time. Survival, women are more survivalists, more long-term. Nest building, yeah. And now more women are getting into high political positions. So that bodes well for environmental issues, probably, doesn't it? But yeah, maybe it's a nurturing network. I'd like that to come through as a focus, because I have no wish to bring more tourists to Leavenworth. I mean, I don't care if they do, but that's not the business I want to be in. The Chamber of Commerce wants to bring always more tourists, and they'd like to see different levels of tourism. And that would be good, because now people come to Leavenworth and they have fun shopping and experiencing Bavarian atmosphere. and food, but there isn't a whole lot to do. And people who live here, there's very little to do. You have to go somewhere else, always in a car. And I wish there could be something that I could do to help. I don't want this new facility to be the cause of more traffic. And this is a tough one. But I really think if I could practice what I preach, I think all developers, and this is a development too, ought to take some responsibility for the traffic that they bring. And for instance, why shouldn't shopping centers, instead of, or hotels or any new structure that's going to bring people, why shouldn't there be a code requirement to provide living spaces instead of parking spaces? What they have to do is provide parking spaces so they serve the cars, not the people. And the cars could come there by themselves and they'd be served. But there's no rule that says that they need to build some living spaces for people who work there so they don't have to come and park. And I expect we're going to have a small staff, but they'll all live on the place. They live on the place now. But I think that the rules should change and require developments to house people so they don't have to drive long distances to get there. Well, they certainly need the railroad. I don't know if that's going to help the traffic problem. It's going to make it possible for people to come without driving over the pass. But, you know, in Europe they have these wonderful railroads and they go so fast and they're so efficient and clean and nice. And you go out on the highways and they're just as crowded as it is here. They've got gridlock too. The trains haven't really solved the problem. And I don't know if trains are going to solve this problem, but we need a train. There's too many people, and nature is going to control population if we don't. The human species is, we're different from all the rest of the animals. They control their population through predator-prey relationships and food supplies and so on. And the balances that keep going back and forth all the time, but there's not balance, there's some harmony. But people have steadfastly refused to control our population, so I guess nature's going to do it for us in devastating, painful, and terribly destructive ways, because we don't want to take that responsibility. And we're seeing that happen right now. Well, Somalia, diseases, AIDS, diseases that get out of control. Well, there's a wonderful book called Mountains Without Handrails, and it tells about the origin of the Park Service and how the Park Service was started by Olmsted, who planned all the beautiful parks in Seattle. It is well known for Central Park, but he's not well known for the origin, the first seed of origin of the National Park Service. And the concept was to provide spaces for people to get away completely undistracted and experience nature in its wild and native state. Well, he didn't mean gift shops. He didn't mean anything to distract. He intended for people maybe to take a car up a road. Do they have cars there? No, carriage maybe. Up a road, and then get out and sit on a rock. They didn't have to go hiking or climb up a rock face or anything, but sit and experience. But anything that would distract from that, the concept was against it. And that meant everything from helicopter tours to selling postcards, because it takes away from the wilderness experience of simply letting it soak in. But they've gotten away from that, and our Park Service has gotten away from that, and we're a lot of the concept now seems to be to get as many people in and out as possible, no matter what they do. And they can sit and watch a TV video of what they could be seeing just by going outdoors and looking. Or taking some very, very noisy vehicle so that they can't hear the sound of nature. But that book draws a very interesting contrast between a real wilderness experience, and that does not take superior athletic ability at all, and the distractive, disturbing lifestyle that we've gotten used to. They do that now. You have to get a license to go up there. It's probably the only thing they can do, because otherwise it's overcrowded. You have to go down to the Forest Service and get a permit to go walking in the woods. You don't need a permit to carry a gun around, but you have to have a permit to walk in the woods.